Disclaimer: the content provided on this channel is for general informational and educational purposes only. It is not legal advice. I am not a licensed attorney. Viewing this content, commenting, or engaging in any communication with the creator of this channel does not create an attorney-client relationship, nor is any communication considered privileged or confidential. The law is complex and varies significantly by jurisdiction. The information presented may not be applicable in your specific state or country. For advice on your individual legal situation or issue, you must consult with a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. Do not act or refrain from acting based on the content of this channel.
Imagine for a moment that your life depends on telling a story. Not just any story, but the worst story of your life. The most painful, terrifying, and humiliating moments you have ever endured. Now imagine you have to tell this story to a complete stranger, in a language that might not be your own, in a formal, intimidating room under fluorescent lights. And this stranger, a government official or a judge, has the power to decide, based on your story, whether you live or die. They can send you back to the very place, the very people you fled in terror. This isn't a hypothetical thriller. This is the reality for tens of thousands of people who arrive in the United States every year seeking political asylum. They arrive with nothing but a story, and for the vast majority, that story is not enough. Consider this staggering fact from Syracuse University's tract database. An asylum seeker without legal representation has, historically, a less than 10% chance of winning their case. Let me say that again. A 90% chance of being denied, a 90% chance of being sent back. But with a lawyer, that number can flip. The chance of success can skyrocket, sometimes by as much as 5 times. This isn't a small statistical bump. This is a life-altering, destiny-defining chasm. And bridging that chasm is the job of one of the most misunderstood and crucial figures in the entire American legal system: the political asylum lawyer. Now you might be watching this thinking, okay, that's interesting, but what does this have to do with me? It has everything to do with you. It has everything to do with what it means to be an American. Because the promise of this country, the very idea of the American dream, begins for so many not with a job or a house, but in a sterile courtroom fighting for the basic right to be safe. And if you want to understand the real, on-the-ground, high-stakes drama of immigration that goes far beyond the headlines and political talking points, you have to understand the role of this lawyer. Over the course of this presentation, we are going to pull back the curtain on this hidden world. We are going to show you exactly what these lawyers do, how they do it, and why their work is one of the most powerful engines of the American dream. We're not just talking about filing paperwork. We're talking about an intricate fusion of skills. Part detective, part therapist, part historian, part storyteller, and all-out legal warrior. So what is the secret? Why does having a lawyer make such a monumental difference? It's because the American asylum system is not designed to be intuitive. It's not a friendly chat where you simply tell your story, and a compassionate official grants you safety. It is a complex adversarial legal process governed by a labyrinth of statutes, regulations, and case precedents that would confuse even a seasoned attorney who doesn't specialize in this field. The legal definition of asylum is incredibly specific. You can't just say you're afraid. You have to prove that you have a well-founded fear of persecution on account of one of 5, and only 5 protected grounds: your race, your religion, your nationality, your political opinion, or your membership in a particular social group. Think about that. A farmer fleeing a cartel that's trying to seize his land doesn't see himself as a member of a particular social group. A young woman escaping forced marriage and brutal domestic violence doesn't naturally frame her trauma in the language of legal precedent. A student activist who was beaten and threatened for protesting government corruption knows he's in danger because of his beliefs, but he doesn't know how to articulate it as a political opinion that meets the stringent requirements of U.S. law. They just know they will be killed if they go back. Their lived experience, their raw human terror, doesn't come with legal labels attached. This is the first and perhaps greatest hurdle. The system demands that the most chaotic and traumatic experiences of a person's life be sorted, categorized, and presented in a way that fits neatly into these 5 legal boxes. Doing this alone is like being asked to perform your own brain surgery using a pocket mirror and a butter knife. It's a nearly impossible task. This is where the asylum lawyer steps in. Their first job is not to argue in court. It's to listen. They conduct hours upon hours of interviews, often with the help of a translator, creating a space of trust where a client can finally unpack memories they have tried their hardest to forget. This process is grueling. It's emotionally draining for everyone involved. The lawyer has to gently probe for details that are excruciatingly painful for the client to relive. Where were you standing when they took your father? What did the soldier's uniform look like? What were the exact words of the threat they made against your daughter? These aren't just details. They are the building blocks of a legal case. A client might remember a specific date they were attacked, but the lawyer knows they need to find corroborating evidence. A hospital record, a police report that was never followed up on, a news article about unrest in their village on that exact day. The lawyer becomes a trauma-informed archaeologist, digging through the rubble of a person's past to find the specific pieces of evidence that will satisfy the exacting standards of U.S. immigration law. They have to transform a flood of painful memories into a coherent, linear, and legally persuasive narrative. They draft a declaration, a sworn statement that can be over 50 pages long, that tells the client's story with the precision of a legal brief, but the emotional weight of a novel. This document is the heart of the case. Every claim must be consistent. Every date must be cross-referenced. Any tiny inconsistency, a misremembered date, a confusing sequence of events, can be seized upon by a government attorney or a judge as a reason to deny the case, to label the applicant as not credible. The assumption is often not innocent until proven guilty, but unbelievable until proven otherwise. And the lawyer's work extends far beyond the client's own story. They become an expert on the client's home country. They spend hundreds of hours researching. They gather State Department reports, articles from Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, and affidavits from academic experts to prove that the client's fear is objectively reasonable. They have to show not just that this specific person was harmed, but that the government of their country is either unwilling or unable to protect them. They are essentially building a case not only for their client, but also against a foreign government's record on human rights. This is a monumental task. They are fighting for one person's future, but to do so they must master the history, politics, and social dynamics of an entire nation. They have to connect their client's individual story of suffering to a larger pattern of persecution, demonstrating that what happened wasn't random or a personal dispute, but part of a systematic attack on people just like them. So, when we talk about the critical role of a political asylum lawyer, we're talking about a guide who can navigate this treacherous landscape. They are the translator not just of language but of trauma into testimony. They are the architect who builds a fortress of evidence around a fragile human story. They are the shield that stands between a terrified individual and a skeptical, overwhelmingly powerful system. Without this guide, the asylum seeker is lost in a legal wilderness, where one wrong turn, one misunderstood question, one forgotten detail can lead to deportation, and in too many cases, to death. The American dream for them is not a distant aspiration. It is the immediate, desperate hope of seeing another sunrise, and that hope often rests entirely on the shoulders of their lawyer. So, who are these lawyers? What kind of person chooses to stand in this breach between a terrifying past and an uncertain future? They are not the slick, corporate litigators you see on television. They are part social worker, part historian, part trauma counselor, and part legal warrior. They are the architects of a person's last, best hope. Their first job, and perhaps the most difficult, is to build a bridge of trust over a chasm of fear. Imagine a small, sterile office. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. Across a simple desk sits a young woman. Let's call her Anya. She arrived in the United States just 72 hours ago with nothing but a small bag and the clothes on her back. She hasn't slept. Every loud noise makes her flinch. The country she fled, a place where her family had lived for generations, had turned on her. Her crime? Reporting on local government corruption for a small independent newspaper. First came the threats. Then her editor was arrested on fabricated charges. Then one night her apartment was ransacked, a clear and brutal message. She knew she was next. She escaped with the help of a human rights organization, a blur of safe houses and clandestine travel that has left her disoriented and terrified. Now she sits across from her asylum lawyer. She doesn't know this person. She has been taught her whole life to distrust authority, to be careful about what she says and to whom. Her fear is a physical presence in the room, a cold weight. She looks at the lawyer, and her mind is screaming with questions. Can I trust you? Will you believe me? Do you understand what I've lost? Do you see me as a case number, or as a human being? The lawyer sees all of this. They understand that the first step is not to ask for documents or dates. The first step is to offer a glass of water, to speak in a calm, steady voice, to make it clear that this room right here is a safe space. It's a sanctuary. For the first time in months, perhaps years, Anya is in a place where she can tell her story without fear of reprisal. The lawyer's job is to convince her of that fact, not just with words, but with patience, with empathy, with unwavering attention. This is the beginning of the most critical phase, gathering the declaration. The declaration is the heart of any asylum case. It is the applicant's life story, a sworn statement detailing the persecution they suffered and why they fear returning to their home country. But it is so much more than a simple recounting of events. It is an exercise in emotional archaeology. The lawyer must become a trauma-informed detective, gently guiding their client through memories that are often fragmented, buried, and excruciatingly painful to revisit. Think about it. When someone experiences profound trauma, the brain doesn't store memories in a neat, chronological order. It shatters them. A detail might be seared into the mind: the smell of rain on the pavement just before the attack, the specific pattern on a soldier's uniform, the sound of a door being kicked in, while the sequence of events becomes a confusing blur. A person might forget a key date or mix up the order of who said what. To an outsider, or worse, to a skeptical immigration judge, these inconsistencies can look like lies. They can be perceived as a lack of credibility, which is the kiss of death for an asylum case. The skilled asylum lawyer knows this. They know that these memory gaps and inconsistencies are not evidence of deceit, but are, in fact, symptoms of the very trauma the client is trying to describe. So they don't push. They don't accuse. They listen. They ask open-ended questions. They might spend hours over multiple sessions just talking about the client's childhood, their family, their hopes and dreams before everything went wrong. This isn't just to build rapport. It's to build context. It's to help the client themselves reassemble the broken pieces of their own memory in a way that makes sense. The lawyer will say things like, "Tell me about the town you grew up in. What did it smell like on market day?" Or, "What was your favorite subject in school?" These questions seem unrelated, but they are vital. They help ground the client in their own humanity, reminding them that they are more than the terrible things that happened to them. And slowly, painstakingly, the story begins to emerge. The lawyer acts as a scribe, a confidant, and a guide, helping to weave these fractured memories into a coherent, chronological, and legally powerful narrative. They are translating trauma into testimony. Every single detail matters. It's not enough for Anya to say, "I was threatened." The lawyer needs to know, who threatened you? What exactly did they say? What was their tone of voice? Where were you? What time of day was it? Was anyone else there? Did you report it? If not, why not? Was it because the police were the ones doing the threatening? This level of detail is grueling for the client to relive, and it's the lawyer's job to navigate this process with profound sensitivity. They are asking someone to tear open their deepest wounds, not for therapy, but to meticulously document the scars for a legal system that demands proof. And as the story takes shape, the lawyer's other role kicks in: the investigator. They are simultaneously building a mountain of corroborating evidence to support every claim made in the declaration. They become experts on the political and social conditions of countries they've never visited. They scour annual reports from Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and the U.S. Department of State. They search for news articles that mention the very government crackdown Anya is describing. They might try to find affidavits from witnesses who have also fled, or from experts who can testify to the dangers faced by journalists in that specific region. If Anya has scars from being beaten, the lawyer arranges for a medical and psychological evaluation from doctors trained to document evidence of torture and trauma. The doctor's report becomes a crucial piece of objective, third-party evidence. If there's a threatening letter she managed to save, it's sent for translation and analysis. Every piece of paper, every email, every doctor's note is a brick in the wall of credibility they are building around their client's story. This is the immense, often invisible labor of an asylum case. It's a race against a ticking clock, a frantic scavenger hunt for proof of persecution, all while managing the profound emotional and psychological needs of a client who is hanging on by a thread. This process takes a toll. Lawyers who do this work are constantly exposed to the worst of humanity. They hear stories of unimaginable cruelty, loss, and suffering day after day. This is called vicarious trauma, and it is a very real occupational hazard. They carry the weight of their clients' stories with them, the responsibility for their clients' lives. They fight against a system that is often adversarial and overburdened. They do it because they believe in the fundamental principle of asylum, that no one should be sent back to a place where they will be tortured or killed. They see the person in front of them not as an immigrant, but as a refugee, a survivor. And they understand that the meticulous, emotionally draining work of building this narrative is the first, indispensable step in transforming that survivor into a future American. The story is now on paper, a declaration signed under penalty of perjury. The evidence is compiled in a binder that can be hundreds of pages thick. But this narrative, this fragile vessel carrying all of Anya's hopes, is about to be launched into the turbulent waters of the United States immigration system. A system with its own currents, its own judges, and its own unforgiving storms. And the first wave of that storm isn't a dramatic courtroom showdown. It's not a gavel strike or a thundering objection. It's a form, a stack of paper. Specifically, Form I-589, the application for asylum and for withholding of removal. To an outsider, it looks like any other piece of government bureaucracy, cold, impersonal, a sea of boxes and lines. But to an asylum seeker like Anya, and to the lawyer who now stands beside her, this form is the battlefield. It is the vessel, the trial, and the verdict all rolled into one. This is where the role of the political asylum lawyer ignites. Because this isn't just about filling in blanks. This is about translating a life of terror into the rigid, unforgiving language of law. The form asks, what do you think would happen to you if you returned to your country? And Anya's mind floods with images, the splintered door, the shouted threats, the faces of men she can never unsee. How do you fit that into a box that gives you 3 lines of text? The form asks for dates, for names, for addresses. But trauma doesn't keep a calendar. Fear doesn't file paperwork. Memories fracture, timelines blur. And the very act of trying to recall a specific detail can trigger a paralyzing wave of anxiety. Anya's first instinct, like so many others, is just to write down the worst parts, the most visceral moments of pain. But her lawyer, a man named David, knows that the system doesn't operate on emotion. It operates on a cold, hard currency called credibility. And credibility is forged in the crucible of consistency. David's job is to become Anya's architect. He listens not just as a lawyer but as a historian, a psychologist, a cartographer of her past. He spends hours, days, not just hearing her story, but helping her excavate it. He uses gentle, probing questions to help her anchor her memories. When you left the house that morning, was it cold? Was the sun out? What did you hear? These aren't just details. They are the foundational bricks of her claim. A single inconsistency, a forgotten name, a date that's off by a week, things that are completely normal for a human being recalling a traumatic event, can be interpreted by an asylum officer as a lie. A single misplaced comma in her written declaration can become a seed of doubt that grows into a tree of denial. David explains that the U.S. government will assume her story is false until she proves otherwise. The burden of proof is entirely on her. She has to prove that her fear of returning is not just real, but well-founded. This is a legal term, a standard she has to meet. It means she must show a reasonable possibility of future persecution. And to do that, she needs more than just her own words. She needs evidence. And this is the second great hurdle where the lawyer becomes indispensable. How do you get evidence from the country you just fled? How does Anya get a police report when the police are the very people who threatened her family? How does she get a sworn affidavit from a neighbor, who is now too terrified to even answer the phone? It's a catch-22 designed to break the unprepared. This is where David transforms from architect to detective. He doesn't just ask Anya for evidence, he helps her create it. He scours international news reports, searching for articles that describe the political crackdown in her region, corroborating the general conditions she described. He finds reports from Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International that detail the very tactics used against her family. He tracks down an academic expert, a professor at an American university who specializes in Anya's home country, and asks him to write an expert opinion on the likelihood of her being targeted if she returned. He helps Anya reach out to a cousin who fled to Germany a year earlier, guiding them through the process of writing a declaration that supports her story, ensuring it's properly signed and legally sound. Each piece of paper, every news clipping, every human rights report, every carefully worded letter is a shield. It's a piece of armor for her narrative. Without David, Anya would be standing alone, armed with nothing but her fractured memories against a system designed to find the cracks. With him, she has an arsenal. But the process is more than just paperwork and evidence. It's a psychological marathon. After the I-589 application is filed, a document now dozens, sometimes hundreds of pages long, complete with exhibits, declarations, and legal arguments, the waiting begins. And the wait is a form of torture in itself. In the United States, the asylum system is famously backlogged. The wait for an initial interview or a court date can stretch for months and more often for years. During this time, Anya is in limbo. She can't go home. She doesn't yet have permanent status in the US. She lives with a constant low-grade hum of anxiety. Every phone call from an unknown number could be immigration. Every official-looking envelope in the mail could be a denial. The American dream she envisioned is replaced by a landscape of waiting rooms and uncertainty. She can get a work permit after her application has been pending for 150 days, but even that is a complex process. She finds a small job cleaning offices at night, sending what little money she can to support the family she left behind, living in constant fear for their safety. In this agonizing void, the lawyer's role shifts again. From detective to lifeline, David checks in with her. He provides updates, even when the update is no update. He reassures her that the silence doesn't mean her case is forgotten. It means the gears of the massive bureaucracy are simply turning at their own glacial pace. He is the one constant in an ocean of uncertainty. He shields her from the despair that consumes so many during this period. When Anya hears a rumor from another immigrant that everyone from her country is being denied, she panics. She calls David, convinced it's all over. And he calmly walks her through the facts, explains the law, and reminds her of the strength of her specific case. He manages her hope, keeping it from soaring into unrealistic expectation or plummeting into crushing despair. Think about the immense psychological weight of this. To have your entire future, the safety of your family, your very life, hanging on a decision made by a stranger in a government office thousands of miles away. A decision that might not come for years. The asylum lawyer isn't just navigating a legal system. They are anchoring a human being who is being tossed in the waves of a brutal, soul-crushing waiting game. They are the keepers of the narrative, not just on paper, but in the heart and mind of their client. And all of this, the painstaking reconstruction of memory, the relentless hunt for evidence, the management of crippling anxiety, is just the preparation. It's the training camp. The main event, the moment where Anya's story will be spoken aloud and judged in real time, is still to come. The application is the map, but soon she will have to walk the terrain herself, facing an asylum officer or an immigration judge whose job is to question, to probe, and to doubt everything she says. And standing next to her, preparing her for every question, anticipating every legal trap, will be her lawyer, the one person who knows that this isn't just a case number. It's a life. This life now sits in a sterile government-issued room. The air is thick with a mixture of cheap coffee, disinfectant, and unspoken anxiety. Across a plain table sits the asylum officer. This isn't a villain from a movie. They are a public servant, trained, often overworked, and guided by a thick binder of regulations and legal precedents. Their task is monumental, to sift through hours of testimony, often delivered through a translator, and determine if the story they are hearing meets the incredibly specific, narrow definition of persecution under United States law. They are looking for credibility, consistency, a linear narrative that makes sense. But trauma is never linear. It's a shattered mirror, reflecting memories in jagged, confusing pieces. The mind, in an act of self-preservation, often buries the worst details, smudges the timelines, and confuses the faces. So the officer probes. You said the men came at night, but your written declaration says it was just after sunset. Which is it? You mentioned 3 men, but a moment ago you said there were 4. Can you clarify? Why didn't you go to the police in your home country? To the officer, these are standard, necessary questions to test the veracity of a claim. To the asylum seeker, they feel like accusations. Every question can feel like a trapdoor, threatening to swallow them whole. They are reliving the worst moments of their life, under a microscope, in a language they may not understand, with their entire future hanging on their ability to be the perfect, unshakable witness to their own suffering. This is where the asylum lawyer transforms from a storyteller into a shield. They've spent dozens, sometimes hundreds, of hours preparing their client for this exact moment. Not by feeding them a script, but by doing something far more difficult, helping them excavate their own memories in a safe, structured way. They create timelines, they draw maps of villages, they use memory jogging techniques to help the client organize the chaotic fragments of their past into a coherent narrative that is, most importantly, the truth. The lawyer knows the legal standard. They know that asylum isn't granted for escaping poverty, or crime, or even a natural disaster. It is granted only to those who have suffered persecution or have a well-founded fear of future persecution on account of one of 5 protected grounds: race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. The entire case hinges on connecting the what happened to the why it happened. The lawyer's job is to build that bridge. So when the officer asks, "Why didn't you go to the police?" a person without a lawyer might just say, "I was scared." That's true, but it's not a legal argument. The lawyer has prepared their client to answer with the full context. "I couldn't go to the police, sir, because in my country, the police are controlled by the same political party that my father spoke out against. The police captain is the cousin of the man who threatened my family. Going to them would have been a death sentence." See the difference? One is an emotion. The other is a cornerstone of a legal claim, establishing that the government is either the perpetrator of the persecution or is unwilling or unable to control the forces behind it. During the interview itself, the lawyer is a vigilant guardian of the process. They listen to every word, not just from their client but from the officer and the translator. Language is a minefield. A simple mistranslation can sink a case. The word for militia might be mistranslated as gang, completely changing the legal implications. The lawyer, often working with their own trusted interpreter or fluent in the language themselves, is there to catch these critical errors. Imagine the officer asks a confusing multi-part question. "So after you fled your village but before you got to the city, did you see the men again and did they have the same weapons you described earlier or were they different?" The client, already under immense stress, might just stammer yes, trying to be agreeable without fully understanding what they're agreeing to. The lawyer will immediately intervene. "Objection, officer. That's a compound question. Could you please break it down for the applicant? This isn't about being difficult. It's about ensuring clarity and precision." It gives the client a moment to breathe, to reset, and to answer each part of the question accurately. The lawyer is also a guardian of their client's humanity. When the questioning becomes too intense, when the client begins to break down, reliving a horrific assault or the loss of a loved one, the lawyer can request a short break. They can offer a glass of water, a steadying hand on the shoulder, a quiet word of encouragement. They remind the person that they are more than just their trauma. They are a human being who deserves dignity, even in this cold, bureaucratic setting. This process is a tightrope walk over a canyon. On one side is the need to provide enough specific, graphic detail to convince the officer of the severity of the persecution. The law requires it. You can't just say bad things happened. You have to describe them. But on the other side is the very real danger of re-traumatizing the client, of forcing them to relive events so horrible their mind has tried to lock them away. The lawyer must guide their client along this treacherous path, ensuring they provide the necessary testimony without being completely shattered by it. They are part advocate, part psychologist, part strategist. They watch the officer for cues, trying to read their reactions. Is the officer convinced? Are there areas of doubt? They make meticulous notes, preparing for the closing statement where they will have a chance to weave all the threads of the testimony together, to connect the facts to the law, and to make one final powerful argument for why their client's life depends on a grant of asylum. And sometimes the most important thing a lawyer does in that room is simply exist. Their presence sends a powerful message. This person is not alone. This person has someone in their corner who believes them. This person's story has value. In a system that can often feel dehumanizing and overwhelming, that simple fact, the presence of an advocate, can be the one thing that gives the asylum seeker the strength to tell their story, fully and truthfully. When the interview is over and the officer says, "You will receive a decision in the mail," a new kind of torture begins, the waiting. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, sometimes years. Every footstep in the apartment hallway, every official-looking envelope in the mailbox, sends a jolt of panic through the body. Inside one of those envelopes will be a single piece of paper that will either be a key to a new life or a deportation order. It's an agonizing limbo, a life paused mid-sentence. And during that wait, the lawyer is the only lifeline. They are the one who checks the case status, the one who fields the panicked phone calls, the one who offers reassurance when hope begins to fade. They are the keeper of the story, and the guardian of the dream, waiting alongside their client for the verdict that will change everything. And that verdict is often forged in the crucible of a single terrifying event: the asylum interview or the immigration court hearing. This is the moment the entire case has been building towards. It's the Super Bowl, the final exam, and a life-or-death confession all rolled into one. For the asylum seeker, this room may be the most intimidating place on earth. It's often a sterile, impersonal government office. Across the table sits an asylum officer, or on a raised bench sits an immigration judge, a person who holds the applicant's entire future in their hands. The weight of that power is a physical presence in the room. The air is thick with it. And seated next to the asylum seeker, a quiet but powerful anchor in this storm, is their lawyer. Many people imagine the lawyer's role in this moment is to be a fiery orator, delivering passionate speeches like in the movies. The reality is often much quieter, but infinitely more critical. The real work was already done. It was done in the weeks and months of painstaking preparation. It was done in the mock interviews, where the lawyer played the role of the skeptical officer, asking the hard, intrusive, and sometimes seemingly cruel questions the client would face. Questions like, if you were so afraid, why did you wait 2 weeks to flee? Or why didn't you go to the police in your own country? These aren't just questions. They are psychological battering rams designed to test the consistency and credibility of the story. The lawyer's job is to prepare their client not just with the facts, but with the emotional armor to withstand this assault without crumbling. They practice until the story, the real true story, can be told calmly and clearly, even when the client's heart is pounding in their chest. Inside the hearing room, the lawyer transforms into a guardian of procedure and a protector of their client's dignity. They are listening with an intensity that few can comprehend. They're listening not just to their client's words, but to their tone, their breathing. They are watching the officer or judge for subtle cues, a raised eyebrow, a dismissive note scribble, a glance at the clock. And they are listening to every syllable of the questions being asked. Is the question legally proper? Is it designed to confuse or trap their client? Is the translator conveying the precise meaning? Or is something getting lost? If a question is out of line, the lawyer will object. Not with a dramatic shout, but with a firm, respectful, "Objection, Your Honor, the question is argumentative." Or, "I'm going to advise my client not to speculate." That single sentence is a shield. It tells the client, I am here. I am watching. You are not alone in this. The lawyer is also the conductor of the narrative. The client holds the raw, painful, often chaotic memories of their trauma. The lawyer's job, even in the hearing, is to help shape that chaos into a coherent, legally cognizable claim. Sometimes a client, overwhelmed by emotion, might forget a critical detail they had discussed. The lawyer might gently ask the judge for a moment to confer with their client, whispering a quick reminder, "Remember to tell them about the second letter you received." Or after the client has finished their testimony, the lawyer will give a closing statement. This isn't a fiery speech. It's a masterful act of legal synthesis. In just a few minutes, they connect the dots. They take the client's harrowing testimony and surgically link it to specific statutes and case precedents. They'll say something like, as Ms. Garcia testified, the threats she received from the MS-13 gang were not random acts of crime. They were persecution on account of her membership in a particular social group, namely female business owners in San Salvador who refused to pay extortion. This is supported by Exhibit C, the State Department report, and Exhibit D, the affidavit from country conditions expert Dr. Evans. They translate the human story of terror into the legal language of asylum. Think about the psychological dynamics at play. An asylum seeker is being asked to recount the worst moments of their life to a complete stranger, a government official whose default position is often skepticism. They are being asked to expose their deepest wounds, and in return, they might be met with a cold, impassive stare. The lawyer acts as a human buffer. Their calm, prepared presence is a counterbalance to the inherent power imbalance of the room. They are a silent testament to the fact that this person's story is credible, that it is worthy of being heard, and that it is protected by the rule of law. They are the client's first believer, and their steadfast belief can be the very thing that gives the client the courage to speak their truth. And make no mistake, that truth will be challenged. In immigration court, there is a government attorney whose job it is to cross-examine the applicant. Their role is to probe for inconsistencies, to test the story's breaking points. They are not malicious. They are doing their job, which is to represent the interests of the United States government and ensure that asylum is granted only to those who truly qualify. This adversarial process can be brutal. The government attorney might bring up a minor discrepancy between a date on the application and the client's oral testimony. Mr. Hussein, you said you left your village on May 5th, but your application states it was May 15th. Which is it? To a traumatized individual, this can feel like an accusation of lying, causing them to panic and get flustered. The asylum lawyer is ready for this. During redirect examination, they will calmly ask, "Mr. Hussein, can you tell the court what was happening in your life during that month? Were you in hiding? Were you able to keep track of dates easily?" They provide the context that the government attorney omitted, showing that a minor memory lapse under duress is not a sign of deceit, but a symptom of trauma. Beyond the testimony, the lawyer is the architect of the corroborating evidence. A story alone, no matter how compelling, is often not enough. The lawyer has spent months, sometimes years, building a fortress of proof around the client's testimony. They have gathered police reports that were ignored, medical records documenting injuries, threatening letters, emails, and text messages. They have commissioned psychological evaluations to formally document PTSD, which helps explain memory gaps. They have obtained affidavits from friends, family, priests, or community leaders who can vouch for the client's situation. They have compiled hundreds of pages of country condition reports from organizations like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, and news articles that show their client's fear is not isolated, but part of a well-documented pattern of violence and persecution. Each piece of paper in that mountain of a file, that asylum packet, was fought for. It represents a dozen phone calls, a chain of emails, a battle with a foreign bureaucracy, a favor called in. The lawyer presents this evidence to the court not as a random pile of documents, but as a curated, indexed, and irrefutable body of proof. They are creating a record. They are building a case so solid, so thoroughly documented, that to deny it would be to ignore a mountain of objective fact. They are ensuring that when the judge or officer makes their decision, they are not just looking at a frightened face across from them, but at an undeniable reality constructed of paper, proof, and precedent. And then, after hours that feel like an eternity, it's over. The final question is asked. The closing statement is made. The evidence is submitted. The lawyer and their client walk out of the room, back into the light of day. They have done everything they possibly could. They have presented the story, built the fortress of proof, and withstood the cross-examination. But the battle isn't won. In fact, the hardest part is just beginning. Now they must wait. The wait. It's a word that sounds so passive, so benign. We wait for a bus. We wait in line at the grocery store. But for an asylum seeker, the wait is something else entirely. It is a living, breathing entity, a vast, silent expanse of time that stretches out before them, a desert with no visible horizon. This isn't waiting. It's a state of suspended animation, a purgatory paved with paperwork and uncertainty. Imagine pouring every ounce of your being, your trauma, your hope, into a single 3-hour hearing. You've relived the worst moments of your life under a microscope. You've faced down a government attorney whose job is to find the cracks in your story. You've placed your entire future into the hands of a single judge. And then silence. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. Months stretch into years. The American immigration system is famously backlogged, a colossal machine groaning under the weight of its own caseload. A judge might hear dozens of cases like yours every single week. For that judge, your story is one file in a stack that reaches the ceiling. But for you, it is the only story that matters. It is your entire world. And in that deafening silence, the mind begins to play its cruelest tricks. Every night, the hearing replays on a loop. Did I say the right thing when the government lawyer asked about the dates? Was my voice shaking too much? Did I sound credible? Did the judge look bored when I was describing the threats against my family? You dissect every glance, every question, every pause in the transcription that you don't even have. You become your own worst prosecutor, finding holes that may or may not exist, convicting yourself in the court of your own anxiety. This is a unique and profound psychological torment. You are here in America, but you are not truly here. You can't put down roots. How can you, when the ground beneath your feet could vanish tomorrow? You might get a work permit, find a job, rent an apartment. You might enroll your children in school. They might start making friends, learning English, picking up an American accent. They might start calling this place home. But for you, the parent, home is a concept that hangs by a thread. Every single day, you live with the knowledge that a single envelope, a single email, could detonate the fragile life you're trying to build. Every unexpected knock on the door sends a jolt of pure adrenaline through your system. Is it IC? Is it the letter? Every time the phone rings with an unknown number, your heart seizes. Is this the call? You see a police car on your street and you immediately think the worst. This isn't paranoia. For someone whose legal status is in limbo, it is a rational, conditioned response to a constant, ambient threat. The trauma you fled from is in the past, but the trauma of the wait is a fresh wound. scraped open every single day. And what is the lawyer's role in all of this? The dramatic courtroom battle is over. The lawyer is no longer a warrior. They become something else, something arguably even more important. They become an anchor. In a sea of crushing uncertainty, the lawyer is the one fixed point. Their job transforms from legal strategist to a unique combination of paralegal, project manager, and crisis counselor. They are the ones who field the frantic late-night phone calls. Any news? Have you heard anything? The client asks for the 10th time that month. The lawyer, knowing there is no news, has to gently, patiently explain that the process is slow, that no news is not necessarily bad news. They have to manage the crushing weight of their client's expectations, recentering them, reminding them that this is a marathon, not a sprint. They become the keepers of hope, the guardians of a flame that is constantly being battered by the winds of doubt and fear. Behind the scenes, the work continues. The lawyer's office is constantly monitoring the case status. They are navigating the labyrinthine online portals and automated phone systems of the immigration courts. They are following up, ensuring the case hasn't been lost in a bureaucratic shuffle, that it's still moving, however slowly, through the pipeline. They are watching for changes in the law, for new precedents set in other cases that might affect their clients. And sometimes the world outside the courtroom changes. Imagine your client is from a country where the political situation is volatile. 6 months after the hearing, a new report is published by Human Rights Watch, detailing a brutal crackdown by the very regime your client fled. This is a critical piece of new evidence. The lawyer can't just sit on it. They must draft and file a motion to supplement the record, to ensure the judge sees this new, objective proof that corroborates their client's story. The case, though submitted, is never truly static. It is a living file, and the lawyer must continue to feed it, to strengthen it, even after the final gavel has fallen. I remember one lawyer telling me about a client, a young man who had fled a brutal civil war. During the 2.5 years he waited for a decision, he fell in love, got married to a U.S. citizen, and had a child. He learned to be a plumber, started his own small business, and became a beloved member of his local church. He was, by every possible measure, a model resident, a contributor to his community. He was living the American dream. But every night, he would go to sleep terrified that he would be forced to abandon his new American family and be sent back to a country that wanted him dead. His entire life was built on a foundation of pure, terrifying uncertainty. His lawyer wasn't just his legal counsel. She was the only person on earth who understood the full weight of the sword hanging over his head. She was the one he called not just with legal questions, but when the sheer stress of it all became too much to bear. This waiting period is the ultimate test of faith. Faith in your story, faith in your lawyer, and faith in a system that often seems indifferent to the human lives caught in its gears. It's a period where the dream of America is at its most fragile, where the promise of "give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free" feels like a distant hollow echo. For the asylum seeker, they are yearning to breathe free, but they are forced to hold their breath, sometimes for years on end. And then one day, after all the silent months and years, after all the sleepless nights and panicked calls, the silence is broken. An email arrives in the lawyer's inbox. The subject line is just a string of numbers, the case file number, or a notification appears on the court's online portal. A decision has been issued in your case. The lawyer's heart pounds. They know that in the next few seconds, by clicking a link and opening a PDF, they will learn the fate of a human being, the future of a family. They take a deep breath, steady their hand, and click. The screen flickers for a fraction of a second. The PDF loads, a sterile government form, deceptively simple. It's a landscape of black and white text, dense legal jargon that holds a universe of color and consequence. The lawyer's eyes don't read the document left to right, top to bottom. They hunt. Their vision tunnels, scanning past the case numbers, the dates, the procedural history. They're searching for a single section, a single phrase, a single life-altering word. It's almost always on the last page. They scroll, the mouse wheel a frantic, silent drumbeat against the desk. And then they find it. The heading. Order. And right beneath it, the verdict. In one reality, the words leap off the page. IT has ordered that the respondent's application for asylum be, and the same is hereby, granted. The air, which the lawyer didn't even realize they were holding, rushes back into their lungs in a shaky, silent gasp. A wave of relief, so potent it's almost dizzying, washes over them. The tension that has been coiled in their shoulders for months, for years, finally releases. For a moment they just stare at the word. Granted. A 7-letter key that has just unlocked a future. They read it again and again, just to be sure their mind isn't playing tricks. It's real. They won. No, he won. She won. They won. The first call is the most sacred duty of this job. The lawyer picks up the phone, their hands still trembling slightly, and dials the number they know by heart. The client answers on the first ring, their voice tight with anxiety. Any news? And the lawyer gets to say the most beautiful words in their professional vocabulary. We won. The judge granted your case. You have asylum. You're safe. What follows is a sound that can't be described, only felt. It's a sob, a shout, a prayer, a laugh, all tangled together. It's the sound of a dam of pure terror, built up over years of persecution and a terrifying journey and a grueling legal battle finally breaking. It's the sound of a human being realizing they will not be sent back to the place they fled. They will not be tortured. They will not be killed. Their children will have a future. Through the tears, the client whispers, "Thank you. God bless you. Thank you." And in that moment, the lawyer isn't an attorney. They are a bearer of life, a messenger of hope. They have just handed someone the American dream, not as a vague concept, but as a tangible, life-saving reality. The late nights, the stress, the crushing weight of responsibility. It all becomes worth it, crystallized in the sound of that joyful weeping. But there is another reality, a parallel universe that is just as common and infinitely more cruel. In this reality, the lawyer scrolls to the last page, their heart hammering against their ribs. They find the heading, Order, and beneath it, the words land like a physical blow. It is ordered that the respondent's application for asylum be, and the same is hereby, denied. Denied. The word just hangs there on the screen. Cold. Final. An epitaph for a dream. The air in the room becomes thick, heavy, impossible to breathe. The meticulous brief, the hundreds of pages of evidence, the hours of sworn testimony, all of it dismissed. The lawyer's mind races, a maelstrom of shock, anger, and a profound, gut-wrenching sense of failure. They read the judge's reasoning and it feels like acid. Inconsistencies in testimony. Lack of sufficient corroborating evidence. Failure to establish a nexus to a protected ground. To the lawyer, these aren't legal terms. They are excuses, justifications for a decision that may have just become a death sentence. Now comes the hardest call any lawyer ever has to make. Their hand feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds as they pick up the phone. They dial the number, and with each ring, a knot of dread tightens in their stomach. The client answers, that same hopeful, terrified voice on the other end. Any news? The lawyer takes a breath. There is no easy way to say this. I am so sorry. The judge denied the case. Silence. A profound, hollow silence that stretches for an eternity. The lawyer can hear the client's breathing, quick and shallow. They can picture their face, the hope draining away, replaced by disbelief and then pure, unadulterated fear. The first question, when it finally comes, is a faint whisper. What happens now? Do they come for me now? And in this moment, the lawyer's role transforms. They are no longer just a legal advocate. They are a crisis manager, a grief counselor, and the last line of defense. They have to absorb the client's devastation while projecting strength and a clear path forward. The fight is not over, they say, their own voice strained but steady. This is not the end. We are going to appeal this decision. This is the next battlefield. The Board of Immigration Appeals, or BIA. But an appeal isn't a do-over. You don't get to present new evidence or have your client testify again. The lawyer must now become a legal detective, scouring the judge's written decision, every page, every line, every footnote, searching for a legal error. Did the judge misinterpret the law? Did they ignore crucial evidence? Did they fail to consider the country conditions reports? The lawyer has 30 days to file a notice of appeal and then a short window to write a new brief, a document that argues not the facts of the case, but the mistakes of the judge. It's an uphill battle. The BIA affirms the vast majority of immigration judge decisions. And while the appeal is pending, the client lives in a terrifying limbo. They can't be deported yet, but they are an asylum seeker with a denial and an order of removal hanging over their head. The fear that haunted them in their home country now follows them through the streets of America. Every knock on the door, every police car they see could be icy. This is the brutal reality of the system. Justice is not always blind. In fact, it can be shockingly arbitrary. It's a grim secret of immigration law known as the asylum lottery. The outcome of a case can depend less on its merits and more on the random judge assigned to hear it. Data has shown staggering disparities in grant rates from one judge to the next, even in the same courthouse. In one courtroom, a judge might grant asylum in 80% of their cases. Down the hall, another judge, hearing similar cases from the same countries, might grant less than 10%. Your life, your future, your family's safety can literally depend on which name is stamped on your hearing notice. It's a terrifying coin flip, and the lawyer and client can do nothing but pray the coin lands on the right side. Furthermore, the very definition of who qualifies for asylum is constantly shifting, often based on the political winds blowing from Washington. A legal argument that was a winning strategy one year can be completely invalidated the next by a new memo from the Attorney General or a change in federal regulations. The lawyer isn't just fighting the facts. They're fighting a system where the goalposts are constantly moving. So whether the email brings the elation of a grant or the devastation of a denial, the lawyer's work is far from over. If they win, they pivot to helping their client navigate the bureaucracy of their new life. Getting a social security card, a work permit, a driver's license. They help them understand the path to a green card and, eventually, citizenship. They guide them from survivor to resident. If they lose, they pivot to war. They prepare the appeal, manage the client's terror, and strategize for the next round in a fight that could go on for years, moving from the BIA to the federal circuit courts. In either outcome, the lawyer remains the constant, the guide, the shield, the strategist. For the family that just heard the word granted, the terror is over. But a new journey, one they never could have imagined, is just beginning. Winning asylum isn't the end of the story. It's the end of the first chapter. What comes next is the long, arduous, and often beautiful process of actually building the American dream piece by piece, on the foundation of that one life-altering word. Yes, that one word, granted, is the key that unlocks a door. But on the other side of that door isn't a finished home. It's an empty plot of land and a set of blueprints. The asylum lawyer, having guided their client to this property line, now takes on a new role: part architect, part foreman, part community guide. The first order of business is to lay the utilities, the absolute non-negotiable infrastructure of a life in America. And that starts with 9 simple digits: a social security number. For someone who has lived in the shadows, whose very existence was a liability, being officially recognized and numbered by the United States government is a moment of profound significance. It's the government saying, "We see you. You are part of our system now. You belong." The lawyer guides them through the application, explaining the forms, ensuring the documentation from the asylum win is in order. It seems like a small piece of administrative paper, but that card is a passport to the American economy. With it, an asylee can open a bank account, build credit, and most importantly, work legally without fear. Simultaneously, there's the matter of the Employment Authorization Document, or EAD. It's the physical proof of the right to work. While an asylee is automatically authorized to work from the moment their case is granted, many employers are unfamiliar with the nuances of immigration law. They want to see that familiar laminated card. The lawyer helps file the necessary paperwork to get that card in their client's hand, removing yet another barrier between their client and self-sufficiency. These initial steps are the concrete pouring into the foundation. They are logistical, yes, but each one is a step away from dependence and a step towards dignity. The dignity of earning your own keep, of providing for your family, of participating, not just existing. But the most significant legal step on the horizon, the one that truly begins to frame the house of their new life, is the application for a green card. Lawful permanent residence. The name itself says everything. It's the transition from a temporary protected status to a permanent secure one. 1 year to the day after asylum is granted, an asylee is eligible to apply. This isn't a rubber stamp. It's a whole new exhaustive process. The lawyer is back in the trenches with their client, preparing Form I-485, the application to register permanent residence or adjust status. It's another mountain of paperwork, another deep dive into the client's history. There will be another medical examination, more biometrics appointments, and another round of intense background checks by multiple government agencies. The government is essentially revalidating everything. They are ensuring that nothing has changed that would make the individual ineligible to remain in the country. Did they commit a crime in that first year? Have they maintained their status as a law-abiding resident? For the asylee, it can feel like they are being put on trial all over again. The anxiety can creep back in. What if they find something? What if they change their mind? The lawyer's role here is one of reassurance and meticulous preparation. They are the steady hand, ensuring every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and that the client understands that this is a standard, necessary part of the journey. To go from a refugee with a temporary right to stay to a lawful permanent resident with a right to live and work here indefinitely is one of the most significant transformations in a person's life. It's the moment the fear of being sent back, a fear that often lingers like a phantom limb, finally begins to recede for good. And yet, for many, even the green card isn't the most important post-asylum process. The American dream isn't just about individual safety or success. It's about family. Imagine fleeing for your life, leaving behind your spouse, your children. You spend years in legal limbo, every waking moment consumed by the terror of what might be happening to them back home, and the desperate hope of your asylum case. You win. You have safety, but you are alone. The silence in your small apartment is deafening. Every meal is eaten in solitude. You are safe, but you are incomplete. This is where the asylum lawyer performs perhaps their most sacred duty, reuniting a family torn apart by persecution. Within 2 years of being granted asylum, an asylee can file a petition, Form I-730, the refugee/asylee relative petition, for their spouse and any unmarried children who were under 21 at the time of the asylum application. This process is a lifeline. The lawyer works with the asylee to gather proof of the relationship, marriage certificates, birth certificates, photos, affidavits from friends and family. They meticulously document the family tree, proving the legal and biological connections across thousands of miles and hostile borders. The petition is sent to USCIS, and if approved, it's forwarded to the National Visa Center, and then to the U.S. Embassy or consulate in the country where the family is waiting. This waiting period is its own special kind of torture. The family members left behind are often still in danger or living in precarious situations in a third country. A phone call can be a lifeline, a missed call a source of panic. The asylee in America works multiple jobs, sending money back, counting the days, praying the paperwork goes through. The lawyer acts as the intermediary, tracking the case, communicating with government agencies, and providing updates that are gulps of air for a family that feels like it's drowning. And then one day the call comes. The visas have been approved. The interview at the embassy is scheduled. The flights are booked. The airport reunion is a scene that plays out in terminals across America, a cinematic moment of pure, unvarnished human emotion. It's a father seeing his daughter for the first time in 5 years, now a young woman. It's a husband holding his wife, both of them crying so hard they can't speak. These are the moments that don't make the headlines. This is the quiet, painstaking work of rebuilding a life, not just for one person, but for a whole family. The lawyer may not be at the airport to see it, but their work is the invisible thread that stitched that family back together. But we must be honest. The legal victories are the framework, but filling that house, making it a home, is another struggle entirely. Winning asylum doesn't erase the trauma. The nightmares don't stop just because a judge says you can stay. Many asylees suffer from profound PTSD. A car backfiring can sound like a gunshot. A knock on the door can trigger a jolt of panic. They carry the ghosts of what they fled. And now they face the disorienting challenge of acculturation. The language is foreign. The customs are baffling. The sense of isolation can be crushing. A brilliant surgeon from Syria might find himself driving for a rideshare company because his credentials don't transfer. An accomplished journalist from Venezuela might be stocking shelves at a grocery store, the words for her next article trapped behind a language barrier. This is the grit of the American dream, the part that doesn't make it into the brochures. It's the humbling, often humiliating process of starting over from zero. You have safety, but you've lost your status, your community, your professional identity. And here, the truly great asylum lawyer's role expands again. They become a connector. They know which nonprofits offer free English classes. They have a contact at a local organization that helps foreign-trained professionals get recertified. They can refer a client to a mental health clinic that specializes in treating trauma in refugee populations. They aren't just legal advisors anymore. They are the first link in a new social and professional network. They are the person you call when you don't know how to enroll your child in school, or how to get a driver's license, or what a 401k is. They are the bridge between the old life and the new. A bridge built not just of legal statutes and case law, but of compassion, connection, and a deep-seated belief in the person they fought so hard for. Building the American dream is a collaborative project, and the lawyer is the one who helps draw the map and hand their client the tools to begin the work. And once that asylum case is won, the work has only just begun. The victory in court isn't the finish line. It's the starting gate of a new life. The lawyer, having drawn the map to safety, now hands their client the essential tools to start building. The first and arguably most important of these tools is the Employment Authorization Document, or EAD. It's a simple plastic card, but it holds the power of 1,000 keys. For someone who may have spent months, or even years in limbo, unable to legally earn a living, this card represents a profound restoration of dignity. It's the difference between depending on charity and providing for your own family. It's the ability to walk into a job interview not as a supplicant, but as a candidate with skills and a future. The lawyer ensures this application is filed correctly and expeditiously, because they understand that a paycheck is more than just money. It's a foothold in a new society. It's the first step towards self-sufficiency, the first thread woven into the fabric of the American economy. With that work permit comes another, equally critical tool, a social security number. To an American, it's a number you memorize in childhood and rarely think about. But to a new asylee, it is the fundamental code that unlocks modern American life. Without it, you can't open a bank account. You can't build credit. You can't sign a lease for an apartment in your own name. You are, in an administrative sense, a ghost. The lawyer guides their client through this process, transforming them from an anonymous case file into a recognized individual within the nation's systems. Suddenly, the dream of having a home, of buying a car, of participating in the financial life of the country, becomes tangible. This isn't just paperwork. It's the formal bureaucratic welcome into the society they fought so hard to join. But these are just the initial steps on a much longer path. The ultimate goal isn't just temporary safety. It's permanent belonging. An asylum grant is not a permanent status. It's a protection. The next great mountain to climb is securing a green card, becoming a lawful permanent resident. By law, an asylee must wait 1 year after their asylum grant before they can even apply. It's a year of holding your breath, a year of proving you are building a life, a year of still feeling a sense of impermanence. When that 1-year anniversary arrives, the lawyer's role is reactivated with immense importance. They prepare the adjustment of status application, another mountain of evidence and forms, meticulously documenting the client's continuous presence and good moral character. This is the legal alchemy that transforms a protected asylee into a permanent resident. The psychological weight of this transition cannot be overstated. It's the moment the fear of being sent back, a fear that often lingers in the shadows even after a victory, finally begins to dissolve. It's the deep soul-settling exhale of knowing you are home, for good. Yet, for so many who seek asylum, the American dream is incomplete, haunted by an aching void. It's the empty chair at the dinner table, the familiar voice only heard over a crackling phone line, the face of a child or a spouse seen only on a small screen. They have found safety for themselves, but their family remains in the very danger they fled. This is where the political asylum lawyer performs perhaps their most sacred and life-altering duty: family reunification. The law recognizes the fundamental right to family, providing a pathway for asylees to petition for their spouse and unmarried children under 21 to join them in the United States. This process, known as an I-730 refugee/asylee relative petition, is a race against time. The petition must be filed within 2 years of the asylum grant. 2 years. Imagine the pressure. The lawyer becomes a beacon of hope in this agonizing wait. They work with the client to gather the proof of relationship, marriage certificates from a country in chaos, birth certificates that may be difficult or dangerous to obtain, photos, letters, anything that proves the family bond across thousands of miles. They navigate the complexities of consular processing, dealing with U.S. embassies in foreign countries, each with its own procedures and potential roadblocks. This isn't just a legal filing. It's a lifeline thrown across an ocean. The lawyer is fighting for a reunion that represents the mending of a soul. They hear the stories of the children left behind, of the spouses living in constant fear. They carry that weight with them. And when the news finally comes that the visas have been approved, the joy is monumental. It is a moment that transcends the law. The lawyer who witnesses a family embracing for the first time in an American airport, a father holding his child who was just an infant when he fled, a husband and wife weeping in each other's arms, is witnessing the very essence of their work. They haven't just won a case. They have restored a family. They have made a person whole again. This act alone is a profound contribution to the American story, a story built generation after generation by families seeking a better life. This ripple effect extends far beyond a single family unit. The lawyer's work doesn't just change one life, it seeds a community. The engineer who was persecuted for their political beliefs can now design bridges in rural America. The doctor who fled a war-torn nation can now treat patients in an underserved inner-city clinic. The teacher who was targeted for educating girls can now inspire a new generation of American students. Each successful asylum case is a net gain of talent, resilience, and perspective for the United States. The lawyer is the facilitator of this incredible human capital transfer. They are the ones who unlock the potential that was suppressed by tyranny and allow it to flourish in the soil of freedom. The contributions of asylees to American science, art, business, and culture are immeasurable. And it all begins with that one lawyer who believed in their story and fought to give them a chance. This is why the relationship between an asylee and their lawyer often endures long after the legal battles are won. The lawyer is not just a service provider. They become a foundational figure in their client's new life. They are the first call when a question arises about buying a home, starting a business, or navigating a new cultural norm. They've been through the fire together, and a bond of deep trust is forged in that shared experience. They have seen their client at their most vulnerable, and have witnessed their incredible strength. This relationship is a testament to the fact that the legal process at its best is a human process. It's not about statutes and precedents. It's about people, their fears, their hopes, and their dreams. The lawyer who understands this doesn't just practice law. They help build lives. They lay the cornerstone upon which a new American legacy can be built, a legacy that will enrich the nation for generations to come. The journey from protected asylee to permanent resident is a monumental leap, a consolidation of the dream. But there is still one final ultimate step to take: the journey to becoming a United States citizen. This isn't just another legal process. It is the final summit of a mountain that once seemed impossibly high. It's the transformation from seeking refuge in America to becoming a fundamental part of America. For the asylee, who has lived with the provisional nature of their status for years, first as an applicant, then as an asylee, then as a permanent resident, citizenship is the ultimate security. It's the end of looking over your shoulder. It is the moment the anchor finally drops, holding fast to the bedrock of the Constitution. It is the promise of a vote, the right to a U.S. passport, the ability to fully and unequivocally call this nation home forever. And the guide who led them out of the darkness of persecution is often the same one who leads them into the full light of citizenship: their asylum lawyer. The path to naturalization is governed by a strict set of rules. Typically, an asylee who has become a permanent resident must wait 5 years from the date they were granted that residency before they can apply. They must demonstrate continuous residence and physical presence in the United States. They must be able to read, write, and speak basic English. They must pass a test on U.S. history and civics. And critically, they must prove they are a person of good moral character. This last requirement can be a minefield. What constitutes good moral character? It's a broad, discretionary standard. And this is where the seasoned Asylum Lawyers Council becomes indispensable once again. The government will scrutinize the applicant's entire history since arriving in the U.S. Any minor legal infraction, any undeclared trip abroad, any inconsistency in their record could jeopardize this final step. The lawyer acts as a historian and a risk assessor, meticulously reviewing the client's life over the past 5 years to ensure their slate is clean and their application is bulletproof. They help gather evidence of community involvement, stable employment, and a law-abiding life, building a fortress of facts around the client's character. The centerpiece of this process is the N-400, the application for naturalization. This is not just a form. It is the autobiography of their American journey. It's a comprehensive document, often over 20 pages long, that asks for every address, every job, every trip taken outside the country for the past 5 years. It asks questions that probe into their past, their associations, and their allegiance. For an asylee, this form is layered with history. The lawyer's role here is that of a master editor, ensuring that the story told in the N-400 is perfectly consistent with the story told in the original asylum application years ago. Any discrepancy, however small, can raise a red flag for a USCIS officer, potentially triggering a deep dive into their original asylum claim and creating a nightmare scenario at the 1-yard line. The lawyer cross-references every date, every name, every detail, ensuring the final chapter aligns perfectly with the first. Then comes the final test, the naturalization interview. The applicant sits across from a federal officer who holds their entire future in their hands. The officer will verify the information on the N400, ask questions about their life, and administer the English and civics tests. This is a moment of immense pressure. The lawyer prepares their client relentlessly. They conduct mock interviews, drilling them not just on the 100 possible civics questions, from what is the supreme law of the land, to name one of the 2 longest rivers in the United States, but on how to answer personal questions with confidence and clarity. They prepare them for the possibility that the officer might revisit aspects of their original asylum claim. Why did you leave your country? Tell me again about the incident on this date. The lawyer ensures the client is not caught off guard, that their memory is fresh, and their answers are unwavering and truthful. They are not just a legal coach, they are a confidence builder, turning anxiety into preparedness, fear into focus. While the lawyer often cannot speak for the client in the interview, their mere presence in the room is a source of immense psychological support, a silent testament that they are not alone. And then, if all goes well, the letter arrives. The one inviting them to the Oath of Allegiance ceremony. This is the culmination of everything. The day of the ceremony is a profoundly emotional event. It's often held in a federal courthouse or a grand public hall, filled with hundreds of people from dozens of different countries. There are tears of joy, families holding small American flags, a palpable sense of shared triumph in the air. The asylum lawyer is often there, sitting in the audience, watching. For them, this is the victory lap. They see the client they first met when they were broken, terrified, and facing an uncertain future. They remember the late nights spent preparing their asylum case, the gut-wrenching tension of the hearing, the elation of the approval. And now they watch as that same person stands tall, raises their right hand, and recites the oath. I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen. For an asylee, these words carry an unimaginable weight. They are not just renouncing a former passport, they are formally severing ties with the very government that sought to destroy them. They are casting off the final chains of their past. That I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. This is the covenant, the promise. The moment they transition from being protected by America to becoming a protector of America. As they receive their certificate of naturalization, they are handed more than a piece of paper. They are handed a new identity. They are no longer Nigerian or Venezuelan or Syrian or Afghan. They are American. Period. Full stop. For the political asylum lawyer, this moment is the ultimate validation of their life's work. It transcends the legal victory. It is a human victory. It's the profound satisfaction of knowing you didn't just win a case. You helped forge a citizen. You played a critical role in the arc of someone's life, guiding them from a place of mortal danger to a place of ultimate belonging. You have witnessed the American dream in its purest and most powerful form. This single ceremony is a microcosm of the entire American experiment. People from every corner of the globe, fleeing oppression and seeking opportunity, coming together to pledge allegiance to a set of ideals. The role of a political asylum lawyer is therefore not merely to navigate a complex legal system. It is to serve as a guardian at the gates of hope. They are the architects of new beginnings, the defenders of human dignity, and the stewards of a promise etched into the base of the Statue of Liberty. They work in the trenches of immigration law, fighting for one person at a time. But in doing so, they strengthen the very fabric of the nation. Each asylee who becomes a citizen enriches this country with their resilience, their gratitude, and their fierce love for a nation that gave them a second chance at life. Their journey is a testament that the American dream is not a myth of the past. It is a living, breathing reality, renewed every single day in courtrooms and ceremony halls across the country, all thanks to the tireless dedication of the lawyers who make it possible.